Hello and welcome to another modelling video. Today is the final installment on Airbrush Basics. Today we're going to cover maintenance and cleaning the airbrush. We're going to be pulling apart and cleaning the single action Citadel airgun and the double action Spar Max. There's not much maintenance you have to do on a single action airbrush. What I always like to do is fill up the cup with lacquer thinner, and I clean the outer glass bit with toilet paper and the thinner itself to get rid of any residue caught in the thread. This includes the inner part of the cap and on top or wherever the cap may make contact to the brush itself. Clean jar is a happy jar, and when you add other paint or thinner in later on, contamination isn't likely to happen, including any small crevices like in the pipe. Just grab a Q-tip or cotton bud and dip it in your thinner and clean her out. Very easy. Now, once we clean out the inner barrel, so we're going to allow the thinner to soak in the brush for a little while, so it's going to be a small tight or as close as the needle can be, and short bursts of the thinner. This to allow the thinner sitting in the brush and just loosening up any paint there is. Later on, what we're going to do is open the actual thread and empty the brush out, pushing anything that we may have kicked up. After this is done, we're going to strip it down piece by piece and clean each component using tissue paper or toilet paper and thinner where the paint may not have been removed. This is looking a bit filthy, mostly around the thread. Now when we're cleaning these pieces, be careful not to get too much thinner on the rubber grommet, as rubber and lacquer thinner don't really match too well. Once it's cleaned back to bare metal, it's perfectly acceptable. I like to do a full maintenance job on my brush once I clean a model, or once I paint and finish a complete model. Due to its robust nature, not too much care is required with the single action, as we've learnt. Plus I do like to clean the exterior as well, just for a nice presentation. Paint does get on your hands. But yeah, going back to it, this brush doesn't require a lot of maintenance. You're probably only looking for about 5-10 minutes of work, and when you're all finished, fill it up the jar with methylated spirits, because lacquer thinner can have a bit of an oil texture to it, to flush it all out. On the other hand, double action requires a lot more work, so make sure you have the layout of all the pieces on hand, and just like the single action, we'll fill it up with thinner, but we'll hold the tissue right into the tip of the airbrush and allow the cup to bubble up a bit. This is the air escaping through the cup and not for the needle. This is helping push air around it, so we're scraping all the paint in the inner walls, which there shouldn't be paint. Normally you look after your double action a lot more than your single action, because the major maintenance work you need to do on it after every single model is a lot harder, it takes a long time, and there are chances of damaging your brush. So when pulling it apart, you need to be very careful and keep an eye on all the pieces, most noticeably the needle. If you bend the tip of the needle, your airbrush becomes junk. Now you can replace the needle from the manufacturer or your model shop, but these needles cost between $20 to $30. So generally, if you like to keep your money, look after your needle. So we draw it out as carefully as possible, and we're going to keep it on a bit of styro. When we're going to dip this tissue into some thinner, and we're going to very slowly wipe it without catching the tip of the needle on the actual tissue to bend it, because even tissue can bend the tip of the needle. So extreme care is taken, yet any scrap of paint stuck on the needle, which there was a tiny bit, needs to be cleaned off. Now when you do walk away from your brush during maintenance, just make sure there's no kids or whatever running through the house, because if that needle rolls off the desk or rolls off that bit of foam, there is a large amount of chance of damage. We're going to continue stripping down the rest of the brush and start the inner part cleaning, which isn't too hard because all you have to do is clean from between the paint cup to where the needle is. It's quite simple. Another thing is, a lot of areas where there is thread, there's going to be some sort of grease, so try not to wipe out the grease too much or get it dirty. And if the grease is starting to get a bit dry, or if you've got thinner on the grease, re-grease it with something like Vaseline or oil-based lubricant. Now I've got a Q-tip and we dipped it in thinner, and we're just pushing it into the inner barrel of it, and we're going to go back to assembling it. Simple and quick. Drawing back the needle into the brush, extreme care, line it up very carefully and push it through, making sure that the needle is going through where it's meant to be and not swaying off and ramming into some bit of metal inside the brush. It's gone completely through, and I'm happy because I can see it through the cap. I'm going to put the protection head. Once I screw the needle in with the ring at the bottom, she's completely safe and I can go back to assembling. Make your final adjustments and make sure it's assembled correctly according to the instruction sheet, and it's going to work beautifully as normal. Again, fill it up with methylated spirits and flush her out, and it's ready for another model kit. Again, I'm going to have to stress and recommend buying a book or guide on airbrushing, even if it's a cheap one or a hobby one, and study up on troubleshooting if you do have any problems in the use of your brush, like inconsistent spray patterns or malfunctions. As this is the conclusion to my airbrushing series, this is only the conclusion to the basic part of airbrushing. In the future I do plan on teaching more advanced techniques such as pre and post shading, only as I learn them and feel sufficient enough to teach it. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember, if you ever have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message.